This is a show for college football sickos who want to live with on-field performance as the number one metric, not expectations, not your name brand, not who your coach is or who your star quarterback is or what position they might be in the NFL draft. This is all about how your team executes on the field. It takes into account who you play and how you play them. It takes into account the type of control that you have over your game, and it rewards you for winning big, winning in control and dominant fashion. It punishes you for losing big, for getting blown out. But if you lose a really close game, you might not get hurt that bad. Or if you win, but it's a tight game against a good opponent, you're going to get more credit than if you're blowing out cupcakes. So this is a show all about giving people the appropriate amount of credit for the performance they do out on the field. And it has some pretty cool things. It shakes up what the AP expectations are quite a bit. Sometimes we line up, sometimes we don't. So, a little preview here on the opening slide for those of you watching on YouTube of where some big names are falling in our rankings. There's some differences with the AP. We'll break that down today.
And do you want to describe what goes into putting this show together? Because some people might think we just get on here, fire up the mics, and start just shooting off rankings for teams. How does this work week in and week out with putting the show together?
We've got a model that we built that takes into account how a team performs minute by minute in the game. When takes into account when you score, when your opponent scores, how long you hold leads and give up leads for, and it gives out a rating. And based on that rating, certain adjustments are made. The model makes adjustments based on not just how you did in the game, but how you were expected to do based on the difference of rating between you and your opponent. So Georgia, for example, is not going to get a ton of credit for blowing out Georgia State, but they would get a ton of credit if they blow out Alabama.
Thanks, Spencer. That's super helpful. This show, we do all the graphics ourselves. We run this model ourselves. We scrape Sunday. We put the graphics together Monday. We put this out on Tuesday. We love this, and we want to share it with the world. The S&D 50, teams 46 through 50. At 50, we have Virginia, 49, Fresno State, 48, Nebraska, 47, Colorado, and 46, Michigan State. Our newcomers to the S&D 50 this week are Virginia, Fresno State, and Colorado.
Yeah, I think Colorado, they've been hovering around for a while. It's good to see them in here. I think that they are representative of a lot of the strength that the Big 12 has. Spoiler, the Big 12, you're going to see a lot more as we get through the middle of the S&D 50. I want to give Chandler Morris, Virginia quarterback, put on just a heck of a show against Stanford. Threw for 4 touchdowns. That passing game was on point. And Virginia has a big game this week. I think that, we'll talk about that game when we get to their opponent. But Virginia, I don't think you expect them to be really great in the ACC year in and year out, but they could threaten this year.
This is the first time that outside of the preseason SND that we're seeing someone other than UNLV from the Mountain West. So we see Fresno State crack in at number 49 after their win over Hawaii. Now, Fresno's got my interest as they have a former head coach of the North Dakota State Bison. He won national championship there, Matt Entz. And on top of that, they have Kurt Warner's son as their QB, EJ Warner. So this is just an interesting team that they've put together, and here they are breaking the top 50.
Teams 41 through 45. At 45, we have Louisiana Tech, 44, Iowa, 43, Rutgers, 42, North Texas, and 41, UNLV. New to the S&D 50, Louisiana Tech and North Texas, returning back into the S&D 50, the Iowa Hawkeyes.
I mean, of these teams, we talked about how Iowa probably slept on by the model. The model's catching up. That win against Rutgers was a good win. They still haven't passed Rutgers in the ratings yet because Rutgers was more highly rated than Iowa by quite a big margin, but they closed that gap there, within 10 points of each other rating-wise. But the team that, jumps out to me here is North Texas. That they got an overtime win against Army. Yes, Army dropped a game to Tarleton State, but Tarleton State's a wagon.
Their head coach, Eric Morris, was the head coach of Incarnate Word University and an FCS school. Traditionally,
Cam Ward.
Oh,
exactly,
that's right.
Exactly. That's where Cam Ward started. And then Cam Ward started there at Incarnate Word, and then their coach left to Washington State. Eric Morris went to Washington State to be the OC there. Cam Ward followed him, and then he took the head coaching job at North Texas. So, yeah, Eric Morris is a great head coach. North Texas is climbing the ranks, and it's going to be fun to see what damage they do in the American.
One of our listeners, alum of the Incarnate Word, shout out, go Word. Louisiana Tech is the team I want to talk about. Louisiana Tech cracking into the S&D 50 at 45 with a win against Southern Mississippi. Guys, they played LSU well. We will get to LSU later, but this needs to be mentioned. This is incredible to see them this high.
Hey, get credit for playing good opponents well.
And last thing I want to say, if I'm in the Big Ten, the last team I want to see on my schedule is Iowa, because they're not respected by any of the polls except now the SND. But I think they're so dangerous that they could beat any Big Ten team on any day.
This coming week, Iowa has Indiana.
I am looking forward to that game.
Should be incredible.
And they're hosting them too.
It's going to be a good one. UNLV, they won a crazy game against Miami of Ohio. Jacob, it's time to give UNLV their credit here.
So what? UNLV's 4-0 right now. So, but gosh, are they 4-0 or 5-0?
They're 4-0.
Okay. So UNLV's 4-0, but I look at the games that they've won. Miami, Ohio was up by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They came back on that one. Idaho State was leading in the fourth quarter. They came back on that one. Like, they easily could be 2-2. And so, but they keep pulling out wins, and that's all that matters. But I think that's why we're not seeing them like jump up the rankings. We see them only go up 2 spots because they're just barely squeaking these wins out.
Mm-hmm.
Teams 36 through 40. At 40, Notre Dame. At 39, Syracuse. At 38, Illinois. At 37, Washington. At 36, Kentucky. Returning to the S&D 50, previously out of the S&D 50 in week 4, Notre Dame and Syracuse.
Yeah, both Notre Dame and Syracuse were in the S&D 50 to start the season, but haven't been in it for a couple of weeks. Notre Dame, after dropping 2 games to start the season. But, that win against Purdue, we had Purdue as high as the 30s in the S&D before they took a loss at USC. Then now they've taken a loss at Notre Dame, so Purdue is out. They dropped out last week, but they were still, fairly highly rated. They were in the 50s, and Notre Dame just clobbered them. Notre Dame has a road game at Arkansas this week. The thing that's most interesting to me about that game is I think everyone's kind of written off Arkansas season and they see that as, a loss. But we still have Arkansas just outside of the top 50. There's only 11 ranking spots between these two teams. It's a rating gap of over 100 points, so it's not going to get called out in our, highly competitive games to watch. But Arkansas can make a game of that, and that's going to be a tricky test. You could very easily see Notre Dame starting 1-3 this year.
Did either of you guys see what happened to Syracuse today? We are recording this on Monday, September 22nd. They were fined $25,000 for having players fake injuries in the game against Clemson.
Which seems excessive because they dominated Clemson.
I guess it happened in the fourth quarter. 2 guys, a coach and 2 players. You don't see that happen too often.
No, you don't. Illinois down 31 spots in the rankings after taking that terrible loss to Indiana. This week, they have USC.
Ooh, that's going to be a good one. Another good one. As
Should be a great one.
USC's higher in this model, I'm expecting, and yeah, that will be fun.
Should be great to see. Illinois, again, they have a chance to right Get right. You can drop 31 spots in a week. You can go up 31 spots in a week. So Illinois, the future is still bright. At 37 with Washington, I feel like they're a sleeper team in the Big Ten. This week, they have Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't think Washington's going to get by the Buckeyes, though. I really...
They get them at home.
Yeah. I mean,
Washington's
that's true.
a tough place to play. Washington's a very tough place. I'm not saying they're going to beat Ohio State, but I do think this is a large step up in competition for Ohio State since playing Texas.
True. This will be Ohio State's chance to. Well, we'll talk more about Ohio State when we get higher up in the rankings, but I think that Washington could be a tough test for them. I think that "could" is the main word there. I don't think Washington's going to be able to hold the Buckeyes back.
And Kentucky at 36. This week they have South Carolina. Tough spot for South Carolina to come off that loss against Missouri. They get a rested Kentucky team. Lenora Sellers and the Gamecocks need to take this game seriously.
Yeah, Kentucky Mark Stoops always puts together decent squads. And, the expectations in Kentucky are never high. It's like, win 7 games, right? Probably. But
yeah, be in the S&D 50 to 25 range, and you're succeeding.
Yeah. There you go. It's a road game. It's a road game for Kentucky. So South Carolina at least gets to not, they skip on traveling. But I do think that a rested Kentucky team is going to give problems to that South Carolina defense.
As a person who grew up watching Mark Stoops as a coach at Arizona in person and stormed the field personally when they had Nick Foles and Rob Gronkowski, I will say Mark Stoops off a bye, problem. Just a problem. Don't want any part of it. Teams 31 through 35. At 35, down 20 spots in the rankings, you have Tulane. At 34, up 5 spots in the rankings, you have Florida State, spicy. At number 33, down 22 spots in the rankings, Auburn. At 32, down 5 spots in the rankings, Arizona. And at 31, up 18 spots in the rankings, UCF.
Yeah, Tulane really took it on the chin against Ole Miss. We expected that game to be more competitive. We thought Tulane would be the flag bearer for the group of 5, and they still might be. Same story here as we mentioned with Cal in the dropouts. It's a non-conference game. Tulane has the whole American ahead of them, but that game was rough.
Really rough. I thought it would be a lot better. Jake Retzloff did not play well. And that was the third stringer for Ole Miss, playing super great. So we'll talk about Ole Miss in a minute, but man, Ole Miss looked good. Florida State at 34 needs to be mentioned here. Florida State in the AP poll is not at 34. They're at 8. There is a large discrepancy, and that's because the index does not give as much credit to that Alabama win or any of these inferior opponents that they are beating up on. This week they beat Kent State 66-10.
Yeah, now actually a listener question here. I got asked by a listener, someone who I know who'd listened to the show, why Florida State and Alabama are so much lower. And I said, consider this kind of in a vacuum. Last year, Alabama was good, so they started high in our model. Florida State was not good, so they started really low. Not as low as they ended the season last year, but they started really low. But considering it a vacuum, if you ignore their game against each other, Florida State so far has wins against East Texas A&M and Kent State. Alabama so far has wins against UL Monroe and Wisconsin. And Alabama is rated higher than Florida State. But with just those 2 games to go off of, and a game against each other, especially where the expectations for Florida State were so low, the model didn't see fit to reward them both with top 10 rankings or top 15 rankings. It said, hey, a team that we thought would be great and a team that we thought wouldn't played each other. The team that we thought wouldn't be great won. They're going to kind of end up in the middle. So they're both just squatting in the middle of the S&D 50, and they're going to stay hovering around 30, give or take a few spots, until they're able to put together wins against quality opponents. Those opportunities are coming. In the model of Florida State has the chance to beat Virginia. It's a road game. Virginia is being slept on by the country at large, but we've got them in the 50 at 50. That they've got Miami, though, a week from now. They might lose to Virginia because they're sleeping on them as they prepare for Miami. So Florida State's going to have opportunities to prove that they belong up at the top. But so far, they haven't done that outside of Alabama.
And Auburn this week, coming off that loss against Oklahoma, this week they have Texas A&M. Just brutal.
Next week after that, Georgia. Week after that,
Brutal.
Missouri.
Brutal.
And
Auburn does not have Missouri's schedule.
no, they
Got to fit that in every week.
Hey, we'll talk about Missouri's schedule when we get up to them, though. I think that schedule got a lot tougher.
That's true. That's fair. But yes, Auburn about to go through the gauntlet. Started last week, continues on.
Do we need to be giving more respect to UCF? 31. UCF was picked to be a bottom dweller of the Big 12. And here they're sitting at 31. This is a surprise.
They're 3-0, 2 wins against trash teams. No offense, Jacksonville State, but, that was only a 7-point win at home. And then they turn around and throttle North Carolina.
I want to go back to the Auburn game. We said it last week. A transfer quarterback going on the road to this former team is absolute insanity. And what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over. Why are you going back? Jackson Arnold, why did you go back?
Not good. It's never
bad.
A good recipe.
It's a bad idea. So that's just bad. Transfer quarterbacks, look at the schedule. I get that these teams are paying you. I get it really doesn't matter. But man, it's tough to watch that on Saturday because the booing and the crowd is into it. It's tough. Makes it tough. A big game made bigger by your transfer quarterback. And Arizona this week has Iowa State. Arizona coming off the bye. Iowa State coming off a bye. I think it should be a good game.
Is that the Big 12 attempting to schedule marquee matchups like the SEC does? Is that what we just stumbled into?
I mean, it feels a little bit that way, but I think Arizona, I don't think people expected to be here at 32 in the S&D 50 this far into the season in week 5. Teams 26 through 30. At 30, up 8 spots in the rankings, we have Navy. At 29, up 11 spots in the rankings is Louisville. At 28, up 5 spots in the rankings, the Houston Cougars. At 27, up 14 spots in the rankings, Rock Chalk, Kansas. At 26, up 8 spots in the rankings, the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah, Navy has put together a pretty good season so far. They're 3-0. They have a win against Tulsa, the Tulsa team that just put down Oklahoma State into the ground. And I don't know how good that is as a win, but, that was a humbling game for Oklahoma State. Navy has to host Rice this weekend. We didn't talk about Rice in our honorable mentions, but we could have. Rice opened the year 3-1. So that's going to be a tough test for Navy. Rice's only loss is to Houston, who's rated above them.
We see the Rock Chalk Jayhawk climbing their way back up after they got as high as number 6 in the SND earlier this year. So them showing they might have peaked out, but here they are climbing up. They're going to be another force in the Big 12 that you got to look out for. And also Spencer is there. No comment about Louisville this week.
I wasn't gonna. I'm just saying, dark horse to take the ACC.
Okay, Louisville's got Pittsburgh next week. Not a great team. Not in the SND 50. But then they have Miami the following week.
It's a tough game.
We'll find out then.
We will find out then.
We will. The Kansas point, they're up 14 spots. They also get that loss to Missouri looks better after Missouri beats South Carolina. Good thing to note here with the model. So Kansas getting credit.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll make about Kansas is their quarterback, Jalen Daniels. I think he's a 5th or maybe even 6th year senior, and he is really good, very talented quarterback. If he's I don't know where he falls on QB big boards or whatever for the NFL. I don't really follow that, but Jalen Daniels is an incredible dual threat quarterback. And you have to work to bottle him up regardless of how good the rest of the players on that team might be. And, they're showing that they can be really aggressive on offense. So I think Daniels is leading that team really well. And I think Kansas has a lot going for them.
Jalen Daniels showed up to the Big 12 Media Day with a necklace that had a screen on it, and the screen was playing his highlights.
Gotta love it. I love that. If you got it, if you can back it up, do whatever you want, man.
What do they call that these days? Aura farming?
That's
Don't
awesome.
at me, Gen Z. I'm sorry.
With Alabama at 26, we'll talk about them in a second. I think a lot of people, the AP poll has Alabama at 17. We have them at 26. Same, we talked about this with Florida State. They have a chance this week to beat Georgia. They will get credit for that. We talked about the SEC scheduling, both Alabama and Georgia coming off a bye. So two very rested squads ready to go at it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Teams 21 through 25. At 25, down one spot in the rankings, we have the Texas Longhorns. At number 24, up 6 spots in the rankings, the Memphis Tigers. At 23, up 9 spots in the rankings, the Maryland Terrapins. At number 22, up 7 spots in the rankings, Arizona State. And at 21, up 5 spots in the rankings, BYU.
Hey, I mean, Arch Manning looked pretty good, I guess.
His dad, Cooper, said the coolest thing on a podcast I listened to the other day. They asked him about Arch, and he said, I'm his dad. I don't watch anything about him outside of the games. I don't read anything about him. I just cheer for him. As a dad myself, I just have hard eyes for that. That's how all dads should be when their kids are quarterbacks playing any level of sport, whether it's pee-wee football or college football.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just thinking of all the G5 teams that could crack the S&D 50, and I think Memphis might be our highest one. We'll see as we move forward, but I can't think of any other G5s that would be ahead of them since Tulane dropped below them, and you got Navy and North Texas below them and UNLV, so this would look like Memphis would be the playoff team this year, and that now what? That's four American teams in the S&D 50 so far.
It's fun to see. It's fun to see these teams in the G5 conferences getting credit. Maryland is a team a lot of people are sleeping on. They beat up on Wisconsin. They win by 17. They're on a bye this week. Maryland is a team we might be talking about a little bit more as the season progresses.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Andrew. They're 4-0, and their next 3 games are Washington, Nebraska, UCLA.
All
Great.
super winnable.
Yeah, 7-0 is very possible. Now it does toughen up after that.
Scott Van Pelt must be excited. I'm happy for him. Arizona State beat Baylor this week. It does not get any easier. They have TCU.
Yeah, and TCU is rated higher than them. TCU has looked like the better team this year. This Arizona State team is not the team we saw last year, but they've still got a great coach, still got a great quarterback, Sam Leavitt, and, I think that they could do damage, but I don't see Arizona State reaching the playoffs again as a Big 12 champion.
I was looking at their schedule, Spencer, and I think it's the toughest in the Big 12. They are going through a gauntlet, and I just don't see how they make it out of it intact enough for a Big 12 championship appearance.
At the end of that TCU SMU game, Josh Hoover took a massive hit and looked a little shaken up. We will see how he plays next week, but that is something to note.
So Arizona State, here's their next 5 games are teams that are in the S&D 50. They go TCU at Utah, Texas Tech, Houston, at Iowa State. Then they get a couple breaks with West Virginia at Colorado, who is also in the S&D 50, and then they finish off against Arizona. That's
brutal.
Yeah, brutal schedule.
And Mississippi State, they played earlier in the year. We have them much higher in the S&D 50. Arizona State has had no breaks this year.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the Big 12. I mean, BYU, another Big 12 team rated just right, like within a point of Arizona State. Another team that has a tough schedule. They've got a road game at Colorado, another S&D 50 team. Then they've got West Virginia, which I guess is turning into the cakewalk of the Big 12. And then they go at Arizona, home to Utah, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, hosting TCU. That is a brutal stretch of games for the Cougars as well.
The Big 12 is must-watch TV week in and week out for this reason. No one
It's
gets
America's
a break.
conference.
We're going to get to the conference index. It's going to show how many teams are in the index, but man, just fun to watch. Teams 16 through 20. At 20, up 16 spots in the rankings is Texas Tech. At 19, up 16 spots in the rankings, Michigan. At 18, up 10 spots, Tennessee. At 17, up 2 spots, Vanderbilt. At 16, up 2 spots, the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, Texas Tech almost just slid right up into Utah's spot. kind of took over where we thought the Utes would be at this point. But to your point, that's 3 Big 12 teams in a row. And 3 Big 12 teams that I think, with the exception of BYU, Arizona State, they all basically play each other. And they all play TCU, who's still rated even higher. It's a tough stretch.
Another one I have to eat my words on. I thought Utah would take care of business against Texas Tech, but it was the opposite. And Joey McGuire fired both his coordinators after last year, brought in 2 new coordinators, and it looks like those coordinators are working some magic along with the millions of dollars spent in NIL.
Yeah.
And the Patrick Mahomes jerseys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, looking at schedules, though, I'll tell you what, Texas Tech, it may not even be who you play left that's in the S&D 50 or in the rankings. It's how many games do you have against the weaker Big 12 foes? Because the more of those games you have, the better odds you have of winning out. Texas Tech has scheduled Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and West Virginia within, that's games number 8, 9, and 12 for them. So they have a weaker back half, though they do have to play at Arizona State and at Houston in the month of October.
But of the schedules we just went through, that's the one you want.
That's the easiest of those 3.
Now, looking at Vanderbilt climbing up to 17, whoo, getting scary here for Vandy, but we had our honorable mention Utah State just outside of the S&D 50. They're traveling to Vanderbilt this week. It will be interesting to see if the Aggies can give Vanderbilt any sort of run, or if Vanderbilt's going to prove their worth here at number 17 and dispatch of the Aggies pretty easily.
And this is the Aggies' second time to travel into SEC country this year. They had a week 2 game at Texas A&M. They played Texas A&M close for like a quarter, but they ended up losing by 22. We'll see how they do against Vanderbilt. That's either going to be Utah State's chance to jump into the 50 and Vanderbilt's going to take a hit, or that's going to be a win that's worth something for Vanderbilt because Utah State is just outside of the 50.
I really like Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, I really like them, so I think they're going to beat the Aggies. I'd love to see a close game, but I really like Vanderbilt. Tennessee we'll get to. They have Mississippi State this week. Mississippi State is yet to come in the rankings, so we will not talk about that yet. Oregon has a massive game. They play Penn State. We'll not talk about that here. We'll get to that when we get to Penn State. They're a little bit higher. Teams 11 through 15. At 15, up 1 spot, Georgia. At 14, up 6 spots, Georgia Tech. At 13, up 4 spots, Missouri. At 12, up 2 spots, TCU. And at 11, down 3 spots, Iowa State.
Georgia, man, taking that bye week to get rested for Alabama. That game is going to be good.
It was good last year. Should be good this year.
Okay, how many Missouri fans you think are going to watch them play UMass this week, or do you think they need a break?
I bet this is the one they all
UMass.
skip to actually mow their lawn.
Yeah.
UMass is really low in the S&D 50. Out of all 136, they are very close to bottom.
They're
So
number
yeah,
135, sir. They are only ahead of Middle Tennessee State.
correct. This is time for Missouri to get right. Work on that stadium. Work on building some press boxes. It's all good.
And
Take your time.
During the game cast, they're going to pan to the construction going on mid-game.
They're not going to stop the construction crew during the game.
They're like, it's just UMass.
Disclosure, we don't know that's true. We're just speculating. That's a hilarious thought if they didn't. Georgia Tech with a win against Temple. We love Temple because Sam Houston State's coach is now there. They dispatched of Temple. Georgia Tech did with ease. I really like Haynes King and this team. This week they have Wake Forest. Should be light work. And Georgia Tech keeps chugging along in the ACC.
Oh, quick shout out to Temple, by the way. Temple opened the season high note by dominating UMass. But the last 2 weeks, they've given up 40 points to each Oklahoma and Georgia Tech. 90 or almost 90 points between those 2 games. Temple is really looking forward to playing someone more their caliber against UTSA this week.
They got 2 teams in the S&D top 15 because Oklahoma's yet to come. Poor Temple. I mean, they don't have a shot when you're doing that back-to-back.
Hey, I'm giving Temple some credit here. They put up 24 points on Georgia Tech.
Great. It's great.
And
On the
only
road.
lost by 3 scores. So
Only.
Hey, there's some progress being made there at Temple. So
Hey, what do we
there you
say?
go.
Non-conference games. They could still win the American. I'll tell you this, they are undefeated in the American Conference right now. Watch
There you
out.
go. Conference play. I love TCU at 12. The AP poll has TCU at 24. TCU, put some respect on the Horned Frogs. I like him at 12. Arizona State this week.
Yeah, they throttled North Carolina. They played a really tough, like, end-to-end game against SMU. That was a dogfight, man. I didn't realize that rivalry meant so much to those two teams.
Iron Skillet.
Yeah, but TCU is, I think TCU is this year what Arizona State was last year. I think TCU is going to take that game against the Sun Devils.
And Iowa State coming off the bye, they have Arizona. I really like Matt Campbell and Rocco Becht. The experience there, it's great. I'm glad they're coming off some rest. They had that week 0 game against Kansas State. Love them at 11.
Yeah, I think they'll take care of business against Arizona. Arizona's good. Don't get me wrong. The S&D is not wrong for having them where they're at, but the S&D is not wrong for having Iowa State at 11.
Teams 6 through 10 in the S&D 50. At 10, we have Penn State down 4 spots in the rankings. At 9, we have Miami up 4 spots in the rankings. At 8, up 1 spot in the ranking, we have Mississippi State. At 7, up 5 spots, Indiana. And at 6, up 4 spots, Oklahoma. Let's start Penn State, Oregon. Night game, wide out. Week 5. This is what it's all about.
Yeah, this is going to be a big time game for both teams. In the AP, this is a top 10 matchup. For us, it's top 20. But this is going to bring out the fans and bring out the viewers. I think Penn State wideout is going to be the difference maker here. Oregon plays really well week in and week out. But, who have they beaten up so far? Oregon State? Oklahoma State? That win doesn't look that impressive anymore. Northwestern? Northwestern lost on the road at Tulane. So, we don't really know who Oregon is. Now, the same can be said about Penn State. They haven't really beat anyone. In fact, they haven't played anywhere near the caliber of competition even Oregon has. Their best win is against Nevada.
No, their best, not according to the SND. Their best win is
FIU.
against FIU, who is ranked 107. That
who
is
just
their
lost
best
to the
win.
Delaware Blue Hens, who was in our honorable mentions section.
That's true. Credit to FIU for being better than Nevada. I take it back. But they did blank FIU. So
If I had to choose a coach to go to battle with, give me Dan Lanning all day. Give me the Ducks. I want to see them walk in here. They better broadcast that pregame speech with Dan Lanning. I will be sorely disappointed if it's not on television. At 9, Miami. They're on a bye this week. They're getting ready for their season against Florida State next week.
it's going to be a big game. Bigger in the AP and in the world at large than it is for us, but still a big game. And still a chance for Miami to really impose their will on the ratings. They've got to earn the points to keep going up. We're not giving them as much love as the AP is. I've seen people put Miami as number 1. The AP's got them as number 2. We've got them in the top 10, but that bye week's going to be a big rest up. I think Florida State, actually, I know we've already talked about them, but that could be a trip hazard at Virginia if they look ahead to this game too much.
Mississippi State at 8. They have Tennessee this week. Sleeper game in the SEC for AP poll standards because Mississippi State isn't even ranked in the AP, but Tennessee needs to take Mississippi State very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, how did we get here with Mississippi State? It's that win against Arizona State that is really boosting them this high. That and completely dominating everyone else they've played. So, if Mississippi State loses to Tennessee, and especially if they lose badly, that's going to hurt Arizona State too. It'll bring both of them down. But our model really likes Arizona State. It still has them in the top 25, and it's giving Mississippi State a lot of credit for that win. Credit that they can build on if they take down Tennessee at home.
It's been awesome to see Blake Shapen's career revitalized at Mississippi State. Former Baylor starter, lost his job to who we see now, Sawyer Robertson, but now he's doing what everyone thought he was going to do at Baylor.
Jeff Lebby, we got to go through Jeff Lebby's career. He's the head coach of Mississippi State, because you wonder, how did Mississippi State get here? Jeff Lebby has coached at UCF from 2018 to 2019, Ole Miss from 2020 to 2021, and Oklahoma 2022 to 2023. He's got experience. It's not a nobody. So Mississippi State's building good things. Indiana at 7. The AP poll has them at 11. Respect the Hoosiers. They crush Illinois.
Okay, let's stop talking about Heisman talk for Missouri's quarterback, and let's start talking about Heisman talk for Indiana's QB, Fernando Mendoza. He has 14 passing touchdowns up to this point of the season. Why is there zero chatter about this man and what he's doing at Indiana?
And it's the Kurt Signetti effect. Nobody wants to notice. Nobody wants to pay attention to them until it's too late.
Fernando Mendoza, for anyone paying attention, he went 21 for 23. That's a completion percentage of 91% against Illinois, who we had in the top 10 all season long. The S&D 50 did.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
He's nearly at 1,000 yards. He's just shy of 1,000 yards, too. Like, this dude is lighting it up.
And Cal sorely misses him.
Yeah. They missed him putting up a 0 against San Diego last week.
This is where the model really starts to open it up a little bit too. You know, people watching on YouTube can see, but the S&D rating for Indiana is 5640. That's a gap of more than 50 points above Mississippi State at 5587. There have been no gaps of 50 points in our rating. It's all like 1s, 2s, 10s, 20s as you move from 50 all the way up to 8. And then there's a 50-point gap. So from Indiana up, this is the top tier right now in college football in terms of teams who have had the opportunity to show that they're top teams and have really put their opponents in the ground or really dominated at both ends of the field.
And if we continue on this Fernando Mendoza track against Indiana State, I get it, inferior, 19 for 20. Against Illinois the next week off the bye, 21 for 23. It's unreal. You're right, Jacob. He might be in New York.
Man, I'm starting to believe if Kurt Signetti just stayed at James Madison, he would have just brought a natty there.
I mean, Kurt,
you could argue it's an easier path, easier regular season.
He is looking legit as a coach. So legit right now, because that game was dominant, start to finish. It was no fluke. Oklahoma at 6. John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle. I heard the coolest story during this broadcast. Ben Arbuckle, he's only 30. He turned 30 last week. He is the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. They brought him in from Washington State. Get this, when he was a graduate assistant, he had to drive Uber Eats between practices to make enough money for him and his wife to eat at night because he was working for free. This dude has turned Oklahoma around because the defense has always been there, but now they could score.
Yeah, that game was fun to watch. John Mateer has a really high ceiling. He made some dumb mistakes through the course of that game. You know, Jackson Arnold definitely had it tougher from a quarterback situation. That was rough. That defense, you know, they ended the game with the safety. It wasn't 24-17 on touchdowns. Like, that's a pretty traditional looking score, but it was 22-17 until right at the end of the game. And that defense, Oklahoma's defense, got a safety against Auburn. So that defense really won that game. Even though John Mateer did shine and that offense had its moments, it was a defensive game for Oklahoma.
So OU has a bye this upcoming week. And then the following week, they get the one and the only Kent State.
Also a bye. Sorry,
Also
Kent State.
But get this. We talk about giving credit to Utah State for taking 2 trips in the SEC country. Kent State took a trip into Big 12 country to play against potential Big 12 champ Texas Tech. They took a trip into ACC country to play against potential ACC champ Florida State. And now here they go into the SEC to take what is a top 10 SEC program in Oklahoma.
I want to know how much money they made off all three of those. That stocks up the athletic department for the year.
But you got to remember, Kent State had, before they beat Merrimack to open the year, they had not won a game since 2023.
And this is why, Spencer, their athletic director does not care about the morale of the team. All he sees is dollar signs when
the safety
big
of his
schools
players.
say, come to our house. Let us have a bye week against you.
Hey, I mean, if we're going to have a Kent State minute, their game after Oklahoma, they host UMass. That is their time. That is their moment.
Yes.
That's their Super Bowl.
I guarantee you that's going to make the games to watch on the SND. I can call
Let's
that
go.
right now.
It's going to be
Let's
like
go.
It will be the two bottom
134,
teams on the
135.
SND.
We're no respecter of rank number. We just want to know how close the game's going to be when it comes to that games to watch. Jacob's right. Oklahoma has 2 byes. We'll call it 2 byes. And then they have Red River, Texas. People, don't sleep on Oklahoma. We have them at 6 in the S&D. We have Texas at 25. Oklahoma should be the favorite of that game. We will see. I get it. Arch Manning is still a work in progress. So is John Mateer. So I think we'll get a good game.
They've got a rough schedule, though, for the rest of the year. They've got Red River, and then they go at South Carolina. They host Ole Miss. They go at Tennessee, at Alabama. They host Missouri, which is weird that Missouri has a road game at all. And then they host LSU to end the year.
Yeah, that's a horrible schedule. But yes, right now, number 6.
Whew.
Boomer Sooner. This brings us to teams 1 through 5.
Let's
At number
get it.
5, Texas A&M. At number 4, USC. At number 3, Ohio State. At number 2, LSU. And at number 1, first week at number 1, Ole Miss. Let's start with Texas A&M at 5. They had a bye last week. This week they have Auburn.
I feel really bad for Auburn here because that, they really got rocked by Oklahoma. And not in like a blowout, start thinking about next week kind of game, but in a we can try and still fail at the end kind of game. So having to go from that to Texas A&M the very next week, that's just a tough place to be if you're the Auburn Tigers. And it's a road game to boot.
And there's an issue going on with the TV schedule. And you said this last week, Andrew, how conferences need to start contacting the SND about what games to put on TV because
absolutely,
I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But on October 4th, we're going to have A&M versus Mississippi State. And they have that on the SEC network right now. Come on, that should be primetime ABC. That's a top 10 matchup right there. Potential big implications for the SEC championship game.
Love it. Anyone contact us if you want to improve the CFP, to add another rating/ranking model into the mix, and TV networks. Contact us. We would love to help schedule who needs to be on TV when.
Yeah, do you want to know who's in that midday time slot? Roughly the same time on the big networks.
Yeah.
Credit where credit is due. The ABC game at the same time slot is Miami at Florida State. The ESPN game at the same time slot is Texas Tech at Houston. I don't think that's going to be nearly as good of a game as Mississippi State, Texas A&M, but it's still going to be a really good game. ESPN 2 time slot, I don't think they have that scheduled, actually. The ESPN time slot's going to a good Big 12 game, and they haven't scheduled the NBC or the other stations yet. There's no Fox game scheduled for that yet. They have to pick which people are going to have to play in the morning for Big Noon.
Yeah, but according to the SND, Miami's going to wipe Florida State. So,
I mean, hey, we think they're rated higher. That's not indicative.
It's not predictive. I know.
It's not predictive. Pause to remind everyone that the super unofficial, definitely not a sponsor, soda water of our podcast is Waterloo. Just cracked open another can of that.
Contact us, Waterloo.
Let's do it.
Number 4, USC dominant against Michigan State. This week, they have Illinois. That is a big noon game. Speaking of big noon, big one for the Trojans.
A big 3 weeks for the Trojan. Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame. This is really going to show us what kind of team they are.
Yeah, their schedule just, I don't want to say gets tougher. I don't know that Notre Dame is tougher, but it definitely gets more notable in the eyes of everybody else. If they win this stretch, and they would be at that point, 5-0, I believe, with wins against Illinois and Notre Dame. If they can win that stretch, then I think that people are going to start to really recognize USC. We're not the only ones who have them higher than the AP poll. They just slide into the AP poll at 21. I think they were 24 last week. But I think that USC can really threaten in the Big Ten.
Ohio State at 3, down 2 spots. They had a bye, so that's where teams move up ahead of them because other teams played games. They have Washington this week. Like we said, Ohio State should take care of business, but Washington is an S&D 50 team, so take that for what it is.
And Ohio State, if they win against Washington, they'll probably be the number 2 team next week.
And with teams 2 and 1, we have LSU. They dispatched of Southeast Louisiana. Brian Kelly made the offense look a lot better, scoring 56 points there. Ole Miss dispatched of Tulane, 45-10. We mentioned this earlier. Tulane was a top 20 team in the S&D 50 in week 4.
15.
Yeah, and with the third string quarterback, looked great. This week in the Grove, get your chandeliers, get your pregame ready because we have a 1 versus 2 first time this year S&D 50 matchup. Ole Miss, LSU, they hate each other. It's a nasty rivalry that if you don't know about it, you will once you watch that game next week. It's nasty, and it should be great in Oxford.
This one is an ABC game, Jacob. It's not prime time, but it is prime audience, a 3:30 Eastern game. This is going to be a fun one to watch.
It's always fireworks when these two teams meet. A couple years ago, I believe the final score was in the 40s, and it was just back and forth. Malik Neighbors bombs away. Jaden Daniels, boom, boom, boom. So I think it's going to be great. Lane Kiffin's doing a great job. Ole Miss at 1 is so spicy. Ole Miss is 13 in the AP poll.
They have a win against Kentucky, who's 36. They have a win against Arkansas, who's 51. And now they have a win against Tulane, who was 15 at the time that they played them. They're 35. So they have 3 wins against teams in the top 51, if we give a little bit of a stretch to include Arkansas. No one else has that kind of a resume so far in the season. And yeah, it's early. And yeah, they've got a long schedule ahead of them. But Mississippi, Ole Miss has proved that they belong.
And I'm going to go through this. Ole Miss's schedule remaining. LSU, then a bye. Washington State, then they go to Georgia, they go to Oklahoma, they host South Carolina, they host the Citadel.
Tough game.
They host Florida, and then they go to Mississippi State for the Egg Bowl. If Ole Miss can win these next couple games, you have 3 of them. LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, that are really high caliber teams. Ole Miss, that Egg Bowl, Jacob mentioned it earlier, Mississippi State and Ole Miss get down to the end. You might want to get your Egg Bowl tickets now because there might be a winner going to the SEC title game.
What I'm excited to see is to see Ole Miss play the Citadel and then get dropped in the rankings in the S&D. Oh yes,
that's how it works.
Imagine if college football went by the S&D. How that would just put an end to those kind of games late in the season because no one wants to see you get passed up late in the year.
And you're not going to get a lot of credit for playing those cupcakes. You might get credit if teams you beat do well. That's the thing that happened. I mean, you see Ohio
LSU.
State. Yeah. But you see Ohio State here, 7 rating points, just a hair of a tick up because Ohio bounced back and won. That was their last opponent. So they got a little bit of credit for Ohio's win, just to reflect that they've beat teams who are winning games. But they're, LSU, Mississippi are neck and neck right now in points. Ohio State's right behind them. It is crowded here at the top. I mentioned before that the rating point gap between Indiana at 7 and Mississippi State at 8 was more than 50 points. It was nearly 60 points. The rating gap between Indiana at 7 and Ole Miss at 1 is less than 50 points. Like, it is tight up here at the top right now.
That gap that Ohio State created against Texas in week 1 is now closed.
0.5, by the way, is what separates LSU from Ohio State. We round, so you don't see that in the slide, but we round. 0.5 rating points is what separates them.